The idea that we're going to hang it all up at age 65 and sit in a rocking chair and knit the rest of our lives, that's so flawed. How do we reclaim it, make it our own? If we're going to live to 98, which a lot of us will and beyond, are we going to be able to save enough money to hang it up at 65?
I want to give a quick shout out to my podcast manager, Abby. If you're in need of help in launching and managing your own show, please reach out to her at productions@abbygwaki.com. I'll put her details in the show notes. She really is the best, and I love her. Hello and welcome back to Quiet Wealth. I'm your host, Camilla, and I am super excited to have my new friend, Stephanie McCullough, here with me today. But first, if you are new here at Quiet Wealth, welcome. I'm so excited that you have joined us. Here we talk about three things: building wealth, building businesses, and leaving a legacy. And we're going to dive into all of those things with our guest today. Make sure you stick around to the end because the legacy stuff is always my favorite when we talk about what we're doing to live a legacy or leave a legacy. So Stephanie, I met Stephanie at FinCon, which is a financial conference for money nerds. Right up my alley, right up Stephanie's alley. And it was so fun to meet her. She is a financial planner and also the host of the Take Back Retirement podcast. So Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Camilla. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I am so excited to have you on. It was so fun to meet you at FinCon and to meet all of the many amazing creators. Like FinCon is such a great conference. So if anybody needs a good conference recommendation to learn more about money stuff, or if you want to become someone who teaches about money and educates about money, that's the place you got to be. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I get so energized meeting everybody because everyone has their own particular passion and their way of doing things. I think more voices are needed.
Exactly. So Stephanie, give us a rundown of your journey. Like, how did you become a financial planner and what are you really focused on?
Well, it was a career change for me. When I was 30, my husband and I started thinking maybe we want to have kids. And if we did that, maybe it would make sense to live near our parents, the grandparents to be. That would be in the Philadelphia area. We lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And then he got a job offer in Philly. And we were like, oh, I guess this is the universe pushing us this way. I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do in Philly? Like the thing I was doing, international trade stuff, didn't really exist in Philadelphia. So I thought maybe I could join my father's company because I grew up with a father who was a financial advisor. Kind of see being out in the real world, how what he does is of value. So I made this whole big pitch to him and he was like, oh, one of my kids is interested in the business. Like, you had me at hello. I didn't have to make the whole big pitch to him. But I have to say, when I started, I was really a bit lost because I was like, oh, shoot, I'm not like my dad. I'm not a natural born salesperson and I don't have a fancy MBA. Therefore, I can't do this work. So I actually worked with a coach. Nobody had heard of a coach in 1998. People were like, what the heck is that? But it really helped me kind of figure out, oh, there's parts about doing this work with people that I really love. And it's a huge way to make an impact in people's lives and decrease their levels of stress around something that's important, and yet we're not taught about it. So I kind of found my way to having my own conversations about money with people that felt more meaningful to me.
That's fantastic. Oh, I love that you joined the family business.
Second generation.
I want to join my business. That's so cool. So that puts you on the path to financial planning. And who do you typically work with? Like, who's a typical client of yours?
My clients are women in middle age and beyond. So, really women who've gotten to, a particular point in their life, maybe their professional life, maybe, not having worked for a while, but they're starting to look down the road at whatever that future point is for them, whether it's quote unquote retirement or, just the point where they're going to be empty nesters, or maybe, they would like to be able to make a change in what they're doing. And they're thinking, oh, shoot, I got to start paying attention to this stuff. And maybe the traditional financial services industry, the stuff that they talk about doesn't really resonate. Like, oh, let's beat the market and we're going to find the hot stocks for you. Like that doesn't tend to be what my people are most excited about. It's much more about what the money means, what the money can enable, what it can do for you and your people and your family and your community. That tends to be what my people are much more interested in. And they kind of wish they didn't have to worry about the money part. It stresses them out. They don't feel like they're good at it. They're not really obsessed with reading investment newsletters. Like, ugh. That sounds like torture to them. They'd rather have a root canal. That tends to be the kind of people I work with.
That's so great. That's so great. They're hard to understand. I mean, I remember when I first started trying to get into investing in finance and business and all this. And part of my story is that I had babies really young, and a lot of them, I had 5 babies in 8 years, and daycare was just way too expensive. I could not
Yeah.
get a job in my early 20s that could pay for daycare for 5 kids. And
Mm-mm.
so I became the stay-home parent, and I got a little frustrated with that role at times in terms of money contribution, right? Because in my mind, the only contribution to the household money was bringing in income.
That's what we're
And
told.
so I'm like, well, okay, what do I do? But then I stumbled across this article online that talked about becoming the CFO of your family, the chief
Yeah.
financial officer of your family. And it laid out that income is one piece, but then there's like budgeting and managing that money and investing the money and figuring all this out, and then teaching your kids how to use money properly and credit and all of these things, right? And I was like, oh, there's way more to money management than just bringing in the income. So I took all the rest of that and just dove into that and started really learning. I remember reading investment book on stocks, and for the life of me, I could not. Like, I think I'm a smart person,
You are.
could not understand the thing at all, right? And I even took a class in college about stock investing, still could not understand. I'm like, I don't know why this is so hard for me to understand. It's probably because stocks are intangible. It's just something out there in the universe. You're like, okay, I have 50 stocks in Apple. Great. What does that even mean? There was a lot, and I felt dumb that I couldn't understand it. And so, yeah, you get these emotions around money. And I'm so glad that that's your clientele, because that's exactly who we support here at Quiet Wealth, is women in their 40s and 50s who are just now realizing that they need to figure out the money game, right? So
Yeah.
maybe they didn't before, because like in my situation growing up, I was taught that the men do that and the women do something else, right? The men take care of the money stuff and the trash, and the women do the other things, right? So very divided roles. Well, we're in a society that's not as divided anymore. And then the other thing is that a lot of my friends are starting to get divorces. So suddenly the women have to figure out money. They were leaning on their man for all that financial support and that financial knowledge. Suddenly, in the midst of crisis, right, like heart-wrenching crisis, they also have to figure out money. So it just makes it that much harder.
Well, and the statistic that I heard is that 80% of men die married, whereas 80% of women die single, either because we
Yep.
outlive them or they leave, in some
Yep.
way or other. So having to learn this new thing, which has been stressful and we've successfully avoided until a point when we're going through grief and upset and turmoil, that's not the best time, right? We lose our higher level functioning when we
Yeah.
are in a state of huge emotion. So it's not the best time to learn.
So really the best time is now. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago was the best time, but now is the next best time.
And we're not going to beat ourselves up that we didn't do it 20 years ago because there's no point in that.
No. We just have to accept that, hey, we're starting where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the journey, and it's okay.
Exactly. Yep. Give yourself a little grace. Give yourself a little self-forgiveness if needed.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you see for women in their 40s and 50s when it comes to starting to think about retirement? Because I think, those of us in the Gen X generation will be the next ones to retire, right? Boomers are retiring. Gen X will be next. And I've read many article that says Gen X is the least prepared for retirement than any other generation has been. So I'm like, that's not good. Because our parents, like what worked for our parents, 401ks, they had pensions, they have Social Security. We're not going to have Social Security, I don't believe. The pensions aren't a thing anymore. And 401ks, I have a lot of issues with 401k investing. It can be a good thing, but if you didn't do it exactly right and you have no control over it, there's just, I just can't rely on that same thing that my parents did. So what are some challenges that you're seeing out there with your clients?
Honestly, to me, the biggest challenge I see is a hesitation to engage with one's finances. And because we carry this level of emotional baggage, a lot of shame over a perceived money mistake, or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I only have this much in my investment account at this age. How did I let that happen? Or I can't believe I spent so much here, or I can't believe I have credit card debt. That self-flagellation really is a problem. What I always say is the numbers on the page aren't judging you. The numbers are just data. The judgment all comes from up here, comes from between our ears, and the stuff that we have picked up, the messages we've gotten from the society, right? You got the message that women don't do money things, right? That is all the things that we carry around in this world. And it is a barrier to a lot of women facing their money, looking at their money. I talked to a woman years ago and she's like, oh, that work you do, it sounds really interesting. But if I worked with you, I'd have to admit that I bounced a check last year. Obviously, this was a long time ago because we were still writing checks. But she had this level of shame. She didn't want to admit to anybody that she had made that mistake. I was like, you think I've never bounced a check? Let me tell you some stories. I have bounced checks, baby. So I think that's one of the first challenges. It's so much easier to put this topic off to next month, to next month, to next month, because it feels unpleasant and the self-blame rears up in our heads.
Yeah, and you feel like someone's going to come look at your finances and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're such a mess." But guess what? We're all a mess. None of us have our act together. It's this whole syndrome that we women have that we look at someone else, we're like, wow, she's just got it all together. But the reality is we don't. Like, I don't have it all together. Here I am. I'm teaching people about money and I don't feel like I have it all together. I feel like I have some things together, but other things I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't done that yet. Or I'll learn a new strategy from someone. I'm like, oh yeah, that I should have done that, but I never did that. So there's a lot to learn and you have to definitely give yourself grace. So you were saying something about there's a whole study of behavioral finance. So tell me what do you know about behavioral finance and what do we need to know, I guess, about
Oh my
behavioral
gosh,
finance?
this makes me so excited. I have gotten a certificate in behavioral finance. There are, college courses and advanced degrees in it. There were 2 Nobel Prizes in economics awarded to psychologists for bringing the insights of psychology into economics. Traditional economics, they believe that every human being is perfectly rational, and whenever they're facing a money decision, they're coolly weighing the pros and cons. And rah, rah, rah. That's literally what traditional economics says. And then the psychologist came along and tapped the economist on the shoulder. They're like, hey, have you met people? We're not perfectly rational in any other way of life. Why would we be perfectly rational around money?
Yeah.
So they have documented biases, shortcomings in our thinking, assumptions that we make, ways we trip ourselves up. It's a scientific fact that the human brain is wired to make financial mistakes. Notice I didn't say you are wired. I said the whole human race. To me, that lets us take away the shame and the blame. Oh, wait, what? There's a whole different part of my brain that thinks about a reward in the present day than a future reward. And the part that thinks about the present day reward is a stronger, more powerful part of the brain. That means that future long distance planning is an unnatural act for humans, not for you, for humans. This is just a barrier that we face. Yep. We are more prone to be emotional when investing and to jump out when things are bad and to not feel good about getting in until things are good again. Don't let anybody tell you that's because you're stupid. That's because you're human. If there's proof that the whole human race is bad at this money stuff, I think you can maybe ease up on yourself if you've possibly made 1 or 2 financial missteps in your life.
Yeah. Or even if you had a big mistake, right? Maybe you had a big financial mistake. Maybe you have a bankruptcy in your past. Okay. You had it. You had the bankruptcy. That doesn't mean you cannot become good with money now. Things happen, and really bankruptcies happen. Sometimes it's out of our control. Sometimes there's a lot of things out of our control and it's okay. And so this whole behavioral finance, I mean, the primitive brain is fascinating to me. It is fascinating what it does to us when you study fear and when you get into, okay, I want to try a new thing and your brain's like, beep, beep, beep. This is new. This might kill us.
Yes, danger, danger.
What? But other people have done it. Brain's like, nope, you haven't done it. So might kill you. And it's so fascinating that that's like the primal response. And part of what we have to do is learn to overcome it and also learn that the message that's coming in, we call them thinking errors, right? So behavioral therapists have really helped us identify these too, like thinking errors that come in. If it comes in and says, oh, I suck at money, that's an error. You have to identify, be like, oh, wait a minute. That's an error, thinking error. Get that out of my brain. That is not you. That's just a thinking error from the primal brain. Separating yourself from your brain feels funny, like it sounds funny, but you have to do it. You have to do it because the brain is not always right. What you're thinking is not always right. You identify as, okay, that's an interesting thought. And one of my therapists talked about, let those thoughts just kind of float above you and just look at them like they're clouds. Like, huh, okay, there's that thought. And you don't have to act on any of those thoughts.
But I just love this idea from behavioral finance too, that we love to look for patterns. We as human beings, we love to find patterns, even if they don't really exist, because it helps us think we can predict things. Like, oh, if the stock market does this on the 14th day of November on a full moon, that means for absolute certain this is going to happen. Because in the past, that's not actually true, right? Like the stock market is full of irrational actors doing all kinds of crazy things and it's unpredictable. We cannot predict. And yet we believe we can. So that is an error in thinking as well. It feels like high level thinking, like, look at me, I've done this analysis. I can predict the future. Not so much.
Not so much. That's true. So let's talk about your podcast. It's called Take Back Retirement. I love the name. So talk to me about where the name came from and kind of the whole genesis around that.
So I'm an Xer too. I'm born in 1967, so kind of leading edge of Gen X. And when I was in college, we had a bunch of marches, the Take Back the Night marches, which were against violence against women. So it was kind of, my nod to the Xers out there, the folks who might have been in college at that time. And I want to take back this whole concept of quote unquote retirement. I always say quote unquote retirement, right? Like the idea that we're going to hang it all up at age 65 and sit in a rocking chair and knit the rest of our lives. That's so flawed, both for our generation, because most of my clients don't really want to stop being engaged and being of service in some way and doing something interesting. They might want to stop their crazy high pressure job and do something different, but they don't want to disengage from the world. So how do we reclaim it, make it our own? And the other problem with the traditional retirement is that if we're going to live to 98, which a lot of us will and beyond, are we going to be able to save enough money to hang it up at 65? So I love what you do in talking about building income streams and other things that, can go with you, even if you maybe say goodbye to your primary job. It's really just kind of flipping it up in the air and rethinking the whole idea.
Yeah. And I've been rethinking retirement for a while too, because I'm like you, I have no desire to stop doing what I'm doing and sit around all day. Like that sounds terrible to me. I don't want to retire. I want to change my trajectory and try a new thing every 2 years or every year. I don't know, every 6 months, try something new. And that's what I want to do. One of the flaws that I feel like has happened in the financial planning industry is that there's just been a huge focus on building a giant pile of money. So saving your way to retirement. The problem with that, it makes me nervous to even think about it because I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Exactly.
Right? I might live to 110, right? We're living longer. When I went to my first financial planner, they're like, okay, what age do you think you're going to retire? I'm like, I don't know. Like, so they throw a number on there. How much money do you think you're going to need to live off of in retirement? I don't know. How do you answer these questions and get to a number? And so then they just like throw some number in their little computer system and then they spit out like, okay, that means you need to save this much a month. Well, first off, none of that's realistic because you don't know. You don't know what the future is going to bring. So I like to think about it in a different way. I like to think about it in, okay, how much money do I want every month to live off of? And then how do I put in place income streams that keep coming no matter how old I get? A lot of that is investing and making in good investing choices. And so you have those income streams coming in, but it could be businesses that you own, it could be royalties, right? Maybe you're in a movie and that, like if you're on the cast of Friends, for example, and you're getting royalties from that still, right? They're in their 50s right now and they're getting royalties from that. So they have constant income coming in, regardless of if they go and do another movie or something like that. If you start thinking a little more creatively like that, then you can start focusing on, okay, how do I build those income streams so that they do never dry out?
I love that, right? And we're talking to clients all the time about how do you put in place now in your 40s and 50s, or I have clients in their 60s as well, ways that you could still earn from either your expertise or your career, or maybe something completely different. I have a client who has very specialized expertise, and she's taking a course on how to be on a board. And some of these board positions can pay a decent amount of money, and you're really only meeting once a quarter. So then she can be traveling or doing whatever else in between. But she's starting now she's in her early 50s, thinking about that as something she can continue to do after she kind of hangs up the full-time thing.
Yeah, that's on my list too, is to figure out how to be a board member for these other companies. I love that idea because then I'm still engaged, but not daily engaged, right? And I don't have to do all the daily decisions, but I can bring my expertise to a business and be a board member and advisor. And that's an income stream. And it's one that will continue for a really long time to build. So yes, I love that idea. Okay, so another question for you. So when you talk to your clients and you start working with them, how long do you typically work with someone?
It totally varies. I have some clients who sign up for just a one-time 90-minute consultation. They've got a couple kind of burning questions. And of course, I can't solve everything in 90 minutes. I can never solve anything, by the way. It's always a collaborative discussion.
Yes.
But in 90 minutes, we can kind of talk through the issues that are spinning around in their head, and we can get clear, like, you know what, you've actually got 5 things going on that you need to work about. These 2 are the most important, and here's your next step for each of them. I can do that in 90 minutes, and then they go on their merry way. And maybe they come back once a year for an update, or maybe they come back in 4 years for an update, or maybe never. And that's fine. And on the other end of the spectrum, I have clients who come in and we do the full-on financial planning, which doesn't even start with the numbers. It starts with what's most important to you, what do you want out of life, what makes you happy, what are you worried about, right? All those qualitative questions before we ever look at the quantitative stuff. And then maybe they decide, hey, I like that and I want these folks' help going forward. So they could become an ongoing financial planning client where we kind of do the accountability and help them do all the things. And then we also offer the investment management if they've got a pot of investments they've built up over the years and they want someone to be managing that for them. That is optional, but we do it. I've had clients that have been with us for 12 and more years since I started my business. So I think one thing people don't realize is, like, I've talked to people who inherited a financial advisor, maybe from their parents, or maybe they got an inheritance from their grandmother, and they think they're stuck with that financial advisor. You're never stuck. You can ditch that person, maybe the one who never answers your phone calls. Some financial products might have a surrender charge if you leave, but you can still leave the advisor. Just saying.
This is all really great advice. I recorded a podcast episode the other day about how to create a vision for your life, because I think that's one of the things when you're in transition where all your babies are now leaving the house. I just went
through it a couple years ago.
Now what do I do? Right?
Yep.
It's hard.
Yep.
I'm in the middle of it. Half my babies are gone and I have the other half still at home and my heart aches.
There's a lot of soul searching that happens at that point.
Yes. So you get in this transition and you're like, okay, well, how do I create a vision for my new life? Because you've been so focused on your children and helping them create and launch their lives.
Yep.
Now you're like, okay, now what do I do? How do I create my own life? And what exactly do I want that to look like? And visioning is such a helpful exercise. And it's something that I don't think many of us really have ever done because we're so busy. We're just like moving 100 miles an hour. And now the kids leave. And now you're like, I got a lot of time on my hands. And so I was listening to a comedian, Leanne Morgan. She's from Tennessee. She's so funny. So you should look her up. She talks about this. So she's in her 50s right now and talks about how the transition. She's like, when my kids left, I took to the bed. So I'm like, okay, how do I not take to the bed? Because I could easily see myself going there once they're all gone. But how do I create a new vision, right? A new legacy, a new way to create impact in the world. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit. But first, let's talk about the second pillar of Quiet Wealth, and that's building businesses. So obviously you have your own business. What made you want to be an entrepreneur? Like, how did you decide to do that? And how are you navigating it today?
I kind of never thought I did want to do it. It scared me to be the boss, to be in charge. And when I joined my father's business, I had various roles in the company. And then after a time, I was like, you know what? I want to do it my way. I feel like I cheated because I started my business as a doing business as, right? Which is like a brand name in the world, which is not its own separate business. So I still had the platform and the infrastructure of my father's company when I started my own brand and my own vision and marketing and message out there in the world and one way of doing business. And then my father retired. So, it kind of went that way. So I sometimes feel like I cheated, but it had its own challenges for sure, right? I still had a leg in both camps, but I think I felt like once I got more expertise about it and realized like, oh no, this I think is the right way to do it. And I want to do it the right way with nobody telling me I can't. Then it came a little bit more like, okay, the way to do that is to have my own thing, right? Hang out my own shingle, so to speak. Remember days of feeling like, why can't someone just tell me how to do this? Give me a template. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I want to do it my way. So there's that tension of both things. If you want to do it your own way, you got to build it from scratch, so to speak. There's for sure challenges along the way, but it's been fun. I've become passionate about it. I can never imagine working for anybody else again in the future.
Well, and I think there's so many benefits to having your own business and to being a business owner, even if it's a small one, right? Even if you just have a small little side thing that you're doing, there are just so many benefits to it. And one is like confidence. I remember my first business I launched, I called myself a CEO. I'm like, yeah, I'm a CEO.
Dang straight.
That's pretty awesome. Because, before in my W-2, when you're in your W-2, you're like, okay, all the titles. And I worked in HR and tech companies. And so the titling was important. So you have your first step, and then you move up to a manager, then a senior manager, then a director, then a senior director, then a VP, then a senior VP, and then a C-suite, and then CEO, right? And so there's like all these steps. And so CEO feels really far away.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? But you launch your own business, suddenly you made it, right? You made it.
And jumped all the way at the top.
I was consulting with someone who was talking about this and like, well, I just have a lot of pride in my title. I'm like, yeah, but as soon as you leave, you're CEO. Like, what kind of, if you're prideful about titles, you need your own business for sure. Yes, you could be the CEO.
So you're the CEO and you're the chief bottle washer, right? Like you got to do it all when you first
you get to do it all for sure. Yep, you get to do it all. There's the confidence that comes from launching your own business. There's a lot of tax benefits that you can get. You flip the script on taxes because when you're a W-2 employee, you earn money, you pay taxes, and then you spend. When you're a business owner, you earn money, you spend, then you pay taxes.
As long as it's related to the business, right?
Yes. Yeah. But flipping that script makes a big difference, makes a really big difference. Like things like your phone, right? Everybody needs a phone and I need my phone for business. It's write-offable. So I write that off. So there's lots and lots of things that you can do there. And then impact and legacy and the kind of impacts you can have by having your own business is also pretty cool. And time freedom. I mean, I'm not going to give up my time freedom for anything right now.
For sure.
I need that time freedom. Third pillar is legacy building. So talk to me about the legacy that you are building today.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I think maybe when I started in the profession, I would have shied away from that, right? I would have thought, oh, I don't think I'm building a legacy. I don't know enough to do that. And now I'm like, heck yeah. There are issues I feel very passionate about, especially in my profession, right? The need for more women to be financial planners, the need for more diversity in the profession. Statistics on women has been the same for like 25 years. We have not budged for like in the low 20s of financial planners. It's crazy. And it's a great profession. Talk about time freedom. There's a lot of time freedom and control over your destiny when you're a financial planner. There's that. But then I also feel like a big part of the fulfillment of what I do is that I am reducing my clients' stress about money, getting them in a situation where they're more financially stable so that they can spend their time and energy making the world a better place, like doing their things with their unique genius, whatever that might be. That's how I do it. So I feel like it's kind of a ripple effect. If I'm helping 70 women, and then they're making the world a better place, I feel it's a big part of this satisfaction and what gets me up in the morning about what I do.
That's one of the things you vision about when you're putting together your vision of what is my life going to look like. That's one of the things you can think about. Well, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? So, I mean, when kids leave the house, now you have more time to put into your passion projects, to put into like what you want to do to really affect change in the world.
And this brings up something that I was thinking of when you were talking before about that, phase when the babies all leave and then you're trying to come up with your own vision. Some of the things that come up in my own brain, and I've heard from other women, is that feels indulgent to think about my own personal vision because we've been trained to be caretakers and take care of everybody else. But because you're out there helping others and doing good work, it's not indulgent, right? If you are financially stable, if you are building a business to bring your unique genius to the world, that's actually helping the world. One of the things I believe is if more women were in control of more wealth, the world would be a better place. And there is evidence to back that up. 100%. It is not selfish to worry about your own income, wealth, net worth, building assets, investments. That is not a selfish thing. And your vision for the world is how you get there.
I mean, that's another benefit of having a business is that I get to employ people. I get to
Yeah.
provide a way of life for them. That's pretty great. On the what you just said about more wealth into women's hands is only going to do good for our world.
Yes.
There's actually the wealth transfer. There's a huge wealth transfer happening. It's been coined the silver tsunami, where there's all this money and wealth that's going to be transferred to the next generation. And there's going to be more women coming into wealth than ever before.
Yep.
And I had a conversation with some amazing women on a podcast earlier about this, but it's just really interesting how we need to be prepared to manage that and to take good care of it. And it's the whole concept of, if you're a religious person, it's the concept of the talents in the Bible where, God gives you one talent. And if you manage that well, you get two. If God gives you 10 talents. If you manage that well, you'll get 20. You'll get it doubled. You need to be prepared to know how to manage it wisely, because the more wisely you manage what you have been given, the more you will be given. It's kind of like this test that we all go through. Hey, can you really do it? Okay, you can do it. All right, here's some more. Can you do it with this much? Okay, now you can do some more. And it just kind of builds on itself. And so that's another one of my missions is I want to prepare women to manage this kind of money, right? So when it comes into their hands, they
Mhm.
feel confident and they don't feel shameful and weird about it. And they feel like, this is a gift I've been given. And now I will be able to give and bless the lives of so many other people as well.
I have seen that happen with women, right? If they inherit some money, they feel a big responsibility to the person who left it to them to do something worthwhile with it, whether it's
Mm.
something for their families or for their communities or, even just for themselves. And I don't think it should be a burden. Like you said, I think it should be seen as a blessing. This person wants you to be able to choose what to do with these dollars. I always think of Mackenzie Scott, ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, and she's
Yes.
giving away gazillions of
Yes.
dollars. She gets to choose where that goes. So if you come into wealth either from your own building or from this silver tsunami of the wealth transfer, you then get to choose where to put that to work. And I think that's a great thing.
Agreed. Oh, Stephanie, this has been such an amazing conversation. I have loved just the behavioral finance stuff is so incredible. I think one of the books that I really like is called The Psychology of Money. I'm sure
Oh,
you've read
Morgan
that's
Housel, one of my faves.
yes, such a great book to
Mm-hmm.
help you understand what happens in our brains when we think about money. And I think one of the things that I really want to leave as a legacy is that money's a tool. Money's not the goal and it's
Yes,
not the enemy. And if
exactly.
we assign all this emotion to it as, like it's this huge goal or it's this really bad enemy, we're not using it properly because it's it's
Mm.
it's neutral. And we have to neutralize it and just learn to use it in the way it should be used.
I like how you phrase that. We have to neutralize it because it's perfectly normal that we've picked up these emotions around money. I mean, we get messages about it from society. We're not usually explicitly taught, but like in my family, there were whispered arguments late at night when they thought me and my brother were asleep. So that formed some of my baggage around money. So, of course, it's going to be emotional.
Mhm.
It touches all the most intimate parts of your life, your feelings of security, your
Yep.
relationships, your friendships, everything. So, yes, it's emotional. That's normal. And you need to work to neutralize it. The dollars are neutral. They're there for you to do something with. And I love that, Camilla, you're out there spreading the word about this and having conversations. And I always encourage women to find one or more money buddies, someone with whom
Mm-hmm.
they can talk openly about their money, feel like they're not going to be judged. They can share their goals and be accountability
Right.
partners and learn together and say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling the feelings about money again, right? And have someone to
Mm-hmm.
talk it through. Because when we're spinning around in our own heads, it's really hard to neutralize it.
Yeah. And money friends, you absolutely need a money friend, right? Just like you need a hair salon friend or a fashion friend or a
Yeah.
restaurant friend. You need a money friend where you can have these conversations. And I have several that I could just text at any moment and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. And they will respond and they'll help me
Yeah.
out. In fact, I went on a money retreat a couple months ago. It was a 2-day retreat in California, wine country. It was so beautiful. And we literally talked about money for 2 days straight, like a group of 40 women talking about money for 2 days straight. And it was so refreshing because we are starting to neutralize the conversation and have it not be so charged,
Yes.
and we can talk openly and freely about what's happening with our money. And it's such a thing to do. I should hold some money retreats of my own.
And I don't think you should feel guilty if your money friend is not your life partner, right? Yes, I
Oh
encourage
yeah.
everyone to have open conversations about money with their life partners. And it's still okay if your money friend or your best money friend is your girlfriend or, somebody else in your life. That'd be better because you get a little perspective and a little outside
Right.
objectivity, perhaps.
Exactly. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much again for joining us here at Quiet Wealth. What is the best way for someone to get connected with you if they would like to do so?
Sure. You can follow on social media, Instagram, and all the other places. We're at Sophia Financial. Sophia spelled with an F and Stephanie spelled with a PH. And then the podcast is Take Back Retirement. We're on all the podcast places.
All right, make sure you go and follow her, like her podcast, listen to it, leave a review. And then while you're at it, leave a review for Quiet Wealth as well, because it makes a big difference for us podcasters. Our whole goal behind it, we don't make money off of podcasting. We are just out there trying to educate and spread the word, and it's a labor of love. And just the best gift that you could give us is to please go leave an honest review and subscribe to the podcast. So thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate you. And we'll see you next time here at Quiet Wealth. Bye for now.